Just question on the legal position of police firearms officers. Lord Hogan-Howe.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper, to which I've given private notice.
To the noble Lord Hogan-Howe for his question. As my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, said in her response to yesterday's verdict, this case has caused deep concern for communities and for police officers, and of course deep distress for both families involved. It's important that those families are given space to process the verdict. The Home Secretary confirmed to Parliament in September that work begun under the previous government on the police accountability system was important and would continue. She intends to set out further steps on that work in the Commons in the coming days, and I will of course update this House when she does.
May I thank the Minister for that reply, and I apologise to the House for not reading out the question that I believe I should have done. The reason that I raised this, obviously this is a tragedy. It's a tragedy that a man died, and it's a tragedy of the family for their son, perhaps for the brothers or the rest of the family. I do realise that. But despite the fact that the jury in this case were unaware that, and so as we all were until today, that Mr. Kaba was to be charged and indicted for a shooting only days before this, when he was shot dead, provided also the fact that he was linked to a person being shot in May of the same year, and that the vehicle in which he was travelling had been linked to a further shooting. It took a jury only 3 hours, not knowing that, to find the officer in the case not guilty. Police officers are very few who carry firearms. There are 67 million people in this country, but only around 3,000 who on our behalf are volunteers who will go forward to face someone who is armed or otherwise so dangerous. They're paid no more for taking that awful responsibility. They do not go to work each day to kill anyone. And it does seem as though the system doesn't give them the benefit of doubt that was given by the jury in this case. And I do wonder if the Minister, in his reply, perhaps today, or perhaps it may be necessary tomorrow, I do understand, will consider how the legal system can give the benefit of the doubt to these brave men and women who, on our behalf, in a matter of a fraction of a second, have to make the most awful decision they will make, perhaps never in a career, but usually only once.
The noble Lord will know that it is for the Crown Prosecution Service to determine what charges are processed. And in this case, under current regulations, they've determined to make those charges at this time. It is also for the jury to consider the evidence put before them, which they did in this case, and reached a verdict of acquittal within a short space of time. And it is also for the Home Office to ensure that we support our police officers in doing a dangerous job, upholding the law and protecting our society. All of those aspects and the outcome of this trial will be assessed by my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary. And as I've indicated to this House and to the noble Lord, I will report back when we make the statement as a Home Office in both the House of Commons and in due course this noble House also.
My Lords, may I first thank all the armed police officers who serve, and particularly those who protect us in this House. My Lords, as the noble Lord Hogan-Howe said, this is indeed a tragic situation. But yesterday, Sergeant Martin Blake was exonerated fully. As another accused and exonerated officer, Tony Long, writes today in the Telegraph, and I quote, "The public is only now finding out the truth about Chris Kaba. He says of his fellow gang members that they should have all benefited from anonymity granted by the courts, while Martin Blake was denied the same privilege, isn't just ironic, it's a national disgrace." My Lords, I agree. So what steps will the noble Lord the Minister take to reassure current firearms officers so that they have the confidence that they can carry out their duties with the support and backing they deserve?
I'm grateful to the noble Lord Sharp for his contribution. He will know, again, that the jury in this case made their assessment and gave their verdict on the evidence presented before them in this case. And other matters which he has commented upon were not presented in front of the jury, and therefore the acquittal in this case was determined by the information presented by prosecution and indeed by defence. He will also know that it is important that we do thank the officers who of doing this task voluntarily as armed officers, and this government is certainly very aware of the fact that we need to examine the regime and the discussions that we've had in the light of this case and others that he's mentioned. Police officers are accountable through the law for their use of force, and it's right their powers are scrutinised robustly, but it's also important that we give a commitment to working with the police to strengthen the confidence that officers have that they can undertake their tasks with the support of the Home Office.
My Lords, I refer to my interests in the policing interests in the register. It is, of course, appropriate that on any case where lethal force is used by the police, that it is properly looked at, accountability is maintained, and everyone can be satisfied whether or not that force was used appropriately or not. But why does it have to take so long? These cases drag out, often for several years. That is not appropriate, not in the interests either of the family of the person killed or anyone else. What could be done to expedite matters?
Can I say I agree with my noble friend that it is in the interests of society as a whole that when difficult decisions are taken around the charging or following the killings by police officers, that these matters are resolved in the interests of both the community and the officers as speedily as possible. Again, my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, is reflecting on that, and when she reports to both houses, as I will, we will consider those matters further.
For any family to lose a child is truly tragic, but to lose a child in such circumstances is absolutely dreadful. And if you add to this the deep distrust of the police within some communities, which can lead to all sorts of problems and suspicion, the police must never be above the law, but neither should they have to wait 2 years for a jury unanimously to find them not guilty of such a serious charge that's not just been hanging over them, but also hanging over their family. I mean, the situation is appalling. So can I ask the Minister what steps the government are taking to fix the criminal justice system, which is broken on all levels?
I'm grateful to Noble Baroness Ducey for her question. Again, an individual lost his life in this circumstance. The jury has made a decision based on the evidence before them. That doesn't take away the fact that an individual has lost their life, and that's a big impact on the family. And indeed, there has been a major impact on the police officer who has been charged and now acquitted of the offence that was suggested in the initial charge by the CPS. Those matters of how long that takes is an extremely valid question, and I understand why the Noble Baroness has raised it, and that will be an issue that we will look at in due course. If the criminal justice system is broken, which in many ways there are challenges, then this government has not had stewardship of that system for the last 14 years. I did in part when I was a minister in the previous Labour government, and there are challenges now on timings, on a whole range of issues which my noble friend, my right honourable friend, sorry, the Secretary of State for Justice will be examining, and as it relates to the Home Office, in the matters before this question today from the well-versed and experienced Noble Lord Hogan-Howe, then those are issues we will examine in due course.
Some police officers have been convicted of appalling crimes, but many others have given their lives in the line of duty. So there's a difficult balance to be struck here. It is, of course, right that the police should be held accountable, but is not the Met Commissioner completely right when he says that if we crush the morale of the police, we make all of our society less safe? So in considering the way forward, what discussions and consultation will the Home Secretary be having with those who actually work on the front line of policing in this country?
Well, I'm grateful to the Noble Lord for his question. It's absolutely vital that both the police have confidence to exercise their duties as demanded by this House and government as a whole, and that the police do that in a way that is accountable but with proportion and under the rule of law. And that is what we're going to examine, whether we need to look at how those experience of this case affects and impacts upon that particular aspect. But it's also important that the community has confidence in policing, and the two go hand in hand. And therefore, we need to ensure that we work through this, not just today, but also in the longer term, to both build community confidence in policing, but also to ensure that the police themselves have confidence in their operational skills. And for the reasons that the noble Lord Hogan-Howe said, they have confidence to discharge their duties, because at the end of the day, they are protecting society and are given those powers by this House and by the House of Commons to do so.
This side.
My Lord, can I very much welcome the way in which the Minister is dealing with this. I had the privilege of meeting the armed section of the British Transport Police some years ago, and I was in awe of the responsibility that we place on police officers who are armed and are on the front line for us. So this is obviously a particularly tragic case, but it is also important that we say to the police that we give them our full support when they're carrying out their duty to protect the public.
I'm grateful to the noble Lord for his support and for his welcome. Can I say that the Home Secretary, my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, is continuing the review of the accountability review that was established by previous Home Secretaries in previous governments to examine the issues that are before this House in many of the questions raised today. And my right honourable friend is reaching urgent conclusions on those, and as I've indicated to date, will be reporting back to the House of Commons on that. And my commitment to the noble Lord and to this House is that the moment she does so, I will be here within short order to do the same and be open to questions on the detail of any proposals in due course.
My Lords, I declare my interest as set out in the register. A former armed police officer speaking on the BBC Today programme this morning, and I commend his contribution to noble Lords, asked whether an alternative akin to a military court-martial could be used in such cases. Is this something the government would consider?
I think if, can I just say that as with the noble Lord Hogan-Howe, the noble Lord brings great experience to this matter. He's made a suggestion, it is worth reflecting upon, but I don't wish to give consideration today to that. There are areas that we're looking at in this whole process that I will be party to discuss with this House in due course. But today I would rather reflect on the fact that we have confidence in our police to do the job, and that the jury and the CPS have come to a conclusion in the trial yesterday, which is respecting the rule of law, and the jury has been unanimous in its decision. We will reflect on how we approach the situation post today, if the noble Lord will allow me.
I believe the noble Lord the Minister said that the jury were wholly unaware of the recent evidence that we've now been told in relation to the victim and various activities he'd been involved in. But of course, the police would have been aware of all these matters, and just as equally, the prosecution authorities would have been aware of all these matters when deciding whether or not it was appropriate to charge and try the defendant. Is the Minister happy that with all that information, it was nevertheless considered appropriate to bring this matter to trial?
Well, I mean, the position within the Home Office to make decisions on a range of issues, what I am not eligible to do, and rightly not eligible to do, is to become the Crown Prosecution Service and to determine what information they present to a jury, nor am I in a position to be the jury in this trial, because I have not been party to all the information that was presented to the jury. It is for the CPS to charge, the jury to determine, and then, if a conviction takes place, which in this case it didn't, the judge to pass sentence and the criminal justice system to manage that sentence in an effective and appropriate way. So I hope the noble Lord will accept that his points are interesting, but not for me.
My lords, this side. My lords, in 35 years as a serving police officer, many as a detective, I developed a very high regard for members of juries. And I think we tend to not give them sufficient information, or all the information. And when I was the president of the Police Superintendents Association, we campaigned vehemently to change the law on the right to silence. And your lordships may be surprised to know that when we interviewed prisoners who continually said no comment, and you'll have seen that happen on television probably. We weren't allowed to give that information to the jury. It was felt to be too prejudicial. And the law was changed, and I think we have a better justice system since then. In the light of that, Martin Blake, of course, was acquitted, and what a catastrophe it might have been had he been convicted. Could the noble lord say whether in an appeal, whether the evidence that we've heard today would have been put before the appeal hearing?
Again, I know the noble lord has great experience of policing, but he will also know that those policing matters, those decisions, those charging decisions, that acquittal decision, any appeal decision is not for the Home Office. The issues that we are going to be examining are the areas around police accountability and around the issues that have arisen out of this case, but not this case. It is not for me to be judge, jury, CPS, or indeed police. If I did all of those things, this House would soon call me to order.
Liaison Committee appointment motion, the Senior Deputy Speaker.
My Lords, I beg to move the motion standing in my name on the order paper.
The question is that the motion in the name of the Senior Deputy Speaker be agreed to. As many of that opinion will say content. Contrary not content, the contents have it.